Okay, so this video is going to need a bit of an introduction. A few months ago, going back to January, I introduced in my 6.0 Windows partitioning and Linux partitioning script the possibility of using a larger than 2 terabyte drive in your Xbox One as an internal disk. So you could basically use a 3 terabyte, a 4 terabyte, or a 5 terabyte internal disk and take advantage of the added space. Microsoft only officially supports 2 terabyte, 1 terabyte, and 500 gigabyte drives. So this seemed very promising that going forward people could use much larger drives internally and still take advantage of added external space if they also chose to use an external USB 3.0 drive. However, a couple months after I introduced this, it was discovered by a few of my subscribers that as soon as they tried to copy more than 2 terabytes worth of data to their internal drive, whether it be from an external drive or whether it be from downloading their games directly from Microsoft, in my experience actually, it was about the 2.2 terabyte. So hitting that 2 terabyte to 2.2 terabyte mark, suddenly the copy process starts failing. And you'll see that later in this video exactly what happens. Basically filled up my drive to about 1.8 terabytes of space, and then I recorded the process of copying that final 200 to 300 gigabytes of data and what happens, or what the result of that is. And the result is what you see in front of you here. So this is the actual 5 terabyte drive that I used in my Xbox One and filled it up. And you can see that while the first 3 partitions are okay, the last 2 partitions are corrupt. This last partition here, this is user content, and you can see right now the files themselves and the file system itself is gone. So we can't see any of the data. So I don't even really have any idea how much data I put on this drive because that's where it crapped out. The partition before that is system update. Generally that's an empty partition anyways. There's no files in it. So in my particular case, and you'll see it gets really weird. Basically you have no internal drive, but the system itself still boots. So when you look at the storage, it shows that you don't have any storage at all. However, you're still able to boot the system, so it's kind of interesting. So it shows that you don't need System Update 2, and you don't necessarily need user content to get your Xbox One to boot. However, you can't load any games, copy any games, that sort of thing. As it was described to me by some of my subscribers, they had varying results. So some people, as soon as the drive filled up, they got an error right away, or if they didn't get an error, if they tried to reboot their Xbox One, it wouldn't reboot. They'd get different types of errors. I think in particular, a couple of people mentioned they had E106 errors. E106 usually refers to the system update partition being missing or corrupt. So I'm guessing that once you hit that 2.2 or 2 terabyte mark on your user content partition, the Xbox One doesn't know what to do and either corrupts the file system you're copying to or any of the other file systems or partitions on the actual drive. So in my case, again, I was able to continue to use my Xbox One, but that doesn't seem to be the result that everyone's seeing. So where do we go from here? So I have plans on releasing a 7.0 version of my Windows partitioning and Linux partitioning scripts. In that new version, I'll limit the auto size to make sure it doesn't exceed 2 terabytes. It does look like we can go over 2 terabytes a bit, but I'll probably limit it to almost exactly 2 terabytes. That way it'll be a little bit safer, and you won't ever have to be concerned about hitting the limit that you're seeing here and then resulting in basically destroying your internal drive. But you'll be able to take advantage of some of the additional space that would give you. So what I mean by that is if you were to take a 3 terabyte or 4 terabyte or 5 terabyte drive, but I would say it might still make sense to use a 3 terabyte drive because the Microsoft standard or the Microsoft official 2 terabyte drive formatting standard only allows you to use about 1.6 terabytes of that actual disk. So if we use a slightly larger than 2 terabyte disk, like a 3 terabyte drive, we could potentially use or have a full 2 terabyte user content partition. So that would give you about an additional 400 gigabytes of space. Now that might not seem like a lot, but if you consider the fact that with a 500 gigabyte drive, you only have about 365 gigabytes of usable space as it is, with a larger 3 terabyte drive, you're essentially gaining an additional 500 gigabyte drive equivalent worth of space. Anyways, we'll see. There's a bunch of things we'll have to consider at this point, but I wanted to make this video just to show you proof positive that you really shouldn't, or at this point can't, use a larger than 2 terabyte drive. So my recommendation going forward is that people stick to just using Microsoft official 500 gigabyte, 1 terabyte, and 2 terabyte sizes. Okay, so on with the rest of the video, where I show you basically what happens when you try to fill up your Xbox One internal drive from the point of view of doing it on an actual Xbox One. Okay guys, what you see here is my 5 terabyte Xbox One. This is actually the original system I used when I made my first video about creating a 5 terabyte internal Xbox One drive. And I also have my 4 terabyte external drive, which I just recently did a video on as well. So what I'm going to attempt to do here is copy the data from here to here and see how much data we can get onto our 5 terabyte drive. If my other video is true, or the earlier video I made about you can't use more than 2 terabytes of space, then as soon as we get around 2 terabytes on the internal drive, the system should error and we shouldn't be able to boot again. So we see here, I've already started a copy of data to my internal drive. I've copied about 1.8 terabytes. I wanted to make sure I captured the error and the problem live. I copied about as much as I felt would be safe enough to do without actually crashing or overfilling the drive. And here's our external drive. You can see it's almost completely full. With any luck, I'll actually be able to copy the full contents of the external to the internal, but I don't think that's going to happen. Okay, so let's actually get to copying the additional 200 to 300 gigabytes of files. So I'm going to continue where I left off. I've been copying them all in order, so I left off here in the G section. So to copy from internal or external to internal, it's pretty straightforward. So we want to do copy all. And if I was smart, I would be concentrating on big games first, but it should all work out in the end. Should be a nice one. So you can see there was some heavy hitters in there. Gears of War 4 was really large. Gears of War Ultimate Edition, the Hitman series, and Halo, and Homefront were all pretty large games. So I think that should be enough to put us over the top. So we're just gonna wait this out at this point. So I'll just leave this here on the queue so you can actually see what's getting copied, and we'll see what happens. So we'll just let this record. Okay, guys, so it looks like we must have hit the 2 terabyte mark because all of a sudden all the installation stopped. Let's see where we left off here. I'd have to go back and look at the video, but I think it got to Grow Up, of all games, one of the smaller games, and then that's where it actually did stop. Sorry, it looks like we actually got to Halo 5 Guardians and the installation stopped. See if we can try again, do any kind of error. Yeah. Looks like we hit some sort of wall here, as we expected to see. See if we can. Well, let's try out a few things here. First, let's check before we shut it down, because I'm pretty sure once we shut the system down, it's not going to boot up again. So let's look at our storage here. So it looks like we got to about 2.2 terabytes. I remember reading somewhere in that article that I sent, that I did a video on earlier, that you could get over 2 terabytes of basically the limitations of if you weren't using the correct combination of firmware and partition layout, you could only get, I think it was something like 2.2 terabytes. I'd have to check. In fact, I'll post that here, what I'm referring to. But we can see that's about where we stopped. I'm trying to think what else. All right, so let's see, just for the heck of it, let's see if we can load up a game that we actually copied over. I'm trying to think what would be worth attempting here is to change to internal. Well, I guess it's going to show us the same thing. Trying to think here what is only on the drive. Okay, yeah, so here we go. So we have a case here where the witness is internal only. So let's load up the witness and see if it can actually start. And there you go. So we can't load up games off the internal drive anymore. Right before I did this copy, I was playing Superhot. Now again, Superhot is probably both internal and external, so it's likely loading off the external. Which it does appear to be. Okay, well, we can see that internal games can't load and external games can, but that really isn't doing us much good. I just don't know if there's anything else we can look at here. We get some notifications, and all the notifications are just about the installation stopping. Let's move this out of the way for you guys. Yeah, alright, so what we'll do now is shut it down and see if the system will come back up. Okay, so we have the system completely shut down. So we're going to start it up here again and see what we get. Alright, interesting. Well, we were able to get the system to come back up again. But as you can see, tried to resume the copies that we started earlier, and it's not able to do that. Okay, just for the heck of it, maybe what we'll attempt to do here is load up a game that's internal only. Okay, so what's kind of interesting there, if you look at the bottom, you can see all storage, and it just lists basically the external drive. That's pretty interesting. So let's go over to settings here and see if we can take a look at what's going on with our storage. Look at that. That's pretty neat. So were we able to boot there because of the external drive? Trying to think something that would be local only. Oh, I know here. Can we go to the top? Yeah, so we can only see games now so that you can see there's no way to select the internal drive. So earlier when I tried to load up what game was that I was trying to load up? Oh, The Witness. There it is. Interesting. So it's still listed there. Yeah, so it's on the list, but it's probably because it's in the NAND. But as you can see, it's as if the internal drive doesn't exist anymore. That's really interesting. I'm surprised I was able to get the system to boot. So what we'll do here is we'll shut this down again. And I'm just going to disconnect the external drive. And then we'll see if the system boots. Okay, so I have the external drive here plugged in the back. So we'll just unplug this, put it out of the way, and see if our system boots now without an external drive. Yeah, I find it interesting. We're still able to log on to Xbox Live, but we can't start anything. So let's go back into. So you can see we have 0 gigabytes free. I'm just going to shut the camera off for a second here. Let's try to load up anything here. Let's see. We'll try to load up. The Stick of Truth is a game I had played on the system. Okay, it's not ready yet, it says. Let's go into settings. Storage again. Yeah, so it seems that you might get mixed results when you fill up your drive. In this case, I can't see anything on the drive, none of the data. So I guess the question is too, can you actually uninstall something? You can't manage a game, right? So try again, manage game. Let's go back over here to The Witness. Yeah, there's really not much you can do, and even if I was to uninstall one of these things, I don't think it would make any difference. So, okay, well, so that does it. I don't really think there's much else to show. I am going to put the drive into a Windows 10 machine and just take a look at it, see if the drive itself still looks to be okay. So let's do that now.